Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Eva, and in this video I talk about grief, the lessons that I've learned, and that really helped me to navigate this grief journey of mine. And I really hope that this video can help you too, and pick and choose maybe what fits your personal situation, because each grief story is different. Let it be grief of loss of a situation, past self, past version of you, or loss of a situation, whatever it is. Loss can happen in different ways, and grief because of loss can also happen in different circumstances and different contexts. So maybe pick and choose what works for you. So for me, the first lessons that I've learned regarding grief is that it is so much more than just sadness. That's why if you have a person who's grieving from loss and you say to the person, hey, life is too short to just be sad, it doesn't work like that. You cannot just be happy, because if you have undergone certain loss in your life and you are grieving that loss, it's something that demands to be felt. And if that love that you had for a certain person, or if that trauma that you have experienced was significant, that grief will also be significant, and it will take the time that it needs to take. That's also something that I needed to learn. So it's far too simplistic to say just be happy, because it doesn't work that way. It does take the time it takes, and also grief is so much more than just sadness. It's every different emotion that I could imagine I experienced, like feeling sad, feeling angry, feeling exhausted, feeling desperate, feeling so numb, like all the different emotions, they all contributed to my own grief journey. So grief is so much more than just sadness. It's complex, and it can take months or years. For me it's taking years, so it's really a long journey. And you also can be happy, and at the same time you can be grieving. So for example, for me, if I meet with friends, I'm happy and I'm excited, but at the same time my heart is still broken, and I'm still sad, and I'm still grieving. You can also be grateful, and at the same time you're broken inside. So grief is really very complex. At least for me, that was my experience, and it's so much more than just sadness. And all of those emotions that come with grief are valid as well. Also, what I needed to learn is that grief is non-linear. So grief can happen for, at least for me, it happened for a couple, like for 10 months, and after 10 months I reached a point where I thought, okay, it's better, and then for 1 month it was better, and I could, like, quote unquote be normal again, and then after that month it got worse again, and it went very intensely. All of that grief came back, and it was very overwhelming. And that was just a lesson for me that grief is non-linear, and sometimes you get triggered, and sometimes all of that sadness, all of those anger, frustration, desperation, all of those emotions can come back, and that's just a normal journey of grief also. So yeah, it's not easy to deal with it, but it is what it is. And if, like, what helped me was to take it day by day, and just say, and to accept that what I'm feeling is how I'm feeling, and to hold space for it. So that really helped me too. Also, something super important that I needed to learn is that grief affects the body. So it's not just like sadness, it's really also, at least for me, very heavy emotions. So I slept also one time for a week, almost for a week, was just eating and sleeping, because all of that grief was so heavy. So and also some people that can experience, like me, being tired and fatigued all the time, because mentally it's so much to process that loss. And also it can affect your hunger, like some people eat, some people don't eat, some people sleep, some people don't sleep at all. So if you experience those bodily kind of experiences, like in my case feeling so exhausted, it can have those it can be side effects of struggling with grief. Also, what helped me to understand is it's okay and important to ask for help. Like, I have an amazing therapist, which I'm so grateful for, and I'm just so grateful for. So I think it's so important to have someone who can guide you through that process, because for me it was the first time that I experienced grief in such a big way. Like, of course, I had like one major breakup with my first boyfriend, and I was sad for a couple of months, but still, it was just in no comparison to what I have experienced with that type of grief that I have experienced. So if you're really dealing with a lot of grief, I think it's so important to take the time and to seek professional help. Let it be a therapist, or if you're religious, go to a religious counselor maybe, or but I just prefer a therapist, and because they can guide you, and they can tell you what's normal, what's not normal. So super super helpful. In my case, it was like really life changing. Also, what was important for me to understand is that grief is unique to each person, so each person will experience grief in a different ways. Of course, there are some similarities that are similar in most of grief situations, like sadness, anger, those types of emotions, but still each person experiences in a different way. And there are some people who experience, after maybe a traumatic event or a loss, they experience no emotions, and then after a couple of months they experience sadness. But everything is kind of okay how you experience grief. It's just when you get those emotions, to hold space for them. That really helped me. Also, in this whole process, it's so important for me to have self-compassion, because especially if the grief that you're experiencing is because of a traumatic event, or because of a situation that is maybe not considered or understood by some people. Some people can judge you, or they, if especially if they have not experienced that sort of grief, they can judge you for grieving, and that's super hurtful. So what helped me was to be self-compassionate and to really surround myself with people who understand grief, who have either experienced grief before because of a certain type of loss, or that are like just super tolerant and super non-judgmental, because that's like super super important, because you're already dealing with so much. And I had that, for example, like I had those depression symptoms that I physically was just done. I didn't have any energy, so I was just sleeping and eating. And if you have a person who says to you that you're lazy, that's just like crazy, because it's like, oh my god, like my heart is broken, I don't want to live anymore, and you tell me that I'm lazy. so it's it's really important to surround yourself with people who understand mental health, and who understand grief, and who have also experienced that. Super super important. Also, what helped me was to understand is that grief is not a problem to solve. Grief is an experience to experience, basically. That helped me too, because in the first month or the first year I was like, okay, how do I survive this? But after some time, or after a year, I was like, okay, it's just the experience that I have to deal with in my life. It's just the cards that I got dealt with in my life, and it's just something that I will experience, and that is just part of my life. And I know that after some time it will get better, but for now it is what it is. So it's just something to feel, because if you feel like, at least for me, if I felt those emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, all of those emotions, and I hold space for them. Like, holding space can look like breathing, for me, listening to sad music, or like boxing to release anger. Like, that really helped me to kind of let go of it. But I don't see it anymore as a problem to solve. It's just something that has to be experienced, and that is just part of life. And for some people earlier, for some people more, for some people less, but it's just part of life. Another thing that helped me was to find a balance between, and I think that balance really depends on each individual, but for me, to find like a balance between expressing and feeling my grief, and also destruction via hobbies and fun things. So to find like a balance, and find like a balance between pushing myself and meeting with friends, even though I might feel a little bit sad, but it gives me like dopamine and happy feelings. And also really making space and time for my grief, and kind of finding this balance can be a little bit difficult, but it really helped me to be compassionate in finding that balance between holding space for my grief and also sometimes pushing myself to get back into life. That really helped me a lot. Also what helped me was to understand that grief can make you feel disconnected from people or society, or it can be a very personal journey as well, and that everything is okay. So like you have to find ways that are possibly healthy, like for example through art, music, or any other types of things like journaling also, that can help you navigate that grief situation, and everything is okay how you want to express it, like as long as you don't harm yourself or others. But also I think if the grief is really intense, like at times I really felt like I go crazy, because it was just so much pain, and I was like, oh my god, I think I'm insane. But it's not you're insane, it's just you're experiencing a lot of grief, and that makes people do sometimes weird things. Like for example, for me, just like dancing to music in my room and just like listening to the same song, saying like sad song for like 1 hour or something, and like, but it's just part of the grieving journey. And like those strategies, they can help so much. Another strategy that helped me a lot to kind of navigate that grieving situation was to find meaning in it, because now that I have experienced certain things, I want to help other people with those experiences, either in a professional setting, which I don't know yet, if I really want to become like a therapist. But even if I don't become a therapist, then at least I can help like friends and loved ones navigate those grieving situations, and I can also become more empathetic, and I can really have more compassion with people and really understand what people go through when they go through certain loss and certain grief that comes with the loss. So that helps me to find the meaning in it. But of course, I think that's not applicable to every type of loss. So yeah, but for me that helped me. And also some ways that helped me to navigate the loss was, I already mentioned journaling, that's cool, and then any type of expression. For me it was dancing, dancing to music, to sad music or angry music. Then it can also be art, then it can also be spending time in nature. It can be creating rituals of release, like writing letters and then burning them, or going to a mountain and at sunset and kind of like doing meditation, whatever it is. But finding ways of release, it can be super super helpful. And of course therapy is, in my opinion, really a must. At least for me it was a must in this whole like grieving journey, and to have someone who understands you, that you can talk about it, and who doesn't think that you're crazy, but who can really give you helpful advice, was very very helpful. So yeah, and also what you can do is maybe find a support group. That's also what I've done, and which I'm really happy about, and connect with people who have gone through the same grief that you are grieving, or who are maybe at the same moment dealing with the same grief that you are having to deal with. And that helped me so much to have like people who understand what I'm going through, because it makes me feel less alone, and it makes me feel less crazy, and it makes me feel seen and understood. So if you have that in your community or like city where you live, that's super super helpful. So that was the video for today. Grief is really hardcore. Some days it's easier, other days it's more difficult to deal with it, but it's it's really hard sometimes. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can give it a like, you can subscribe to my channel if you want to, and I hope you have a beautiful day, and I send you so much love in your grief journey. So see you soon.